Hello, my name is Mariana Yervides Gallegos. I'm part for team number 6 for biology, and today I'm going to talk and I'm going to explain the cell, the prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. The cell is the basic structural functional unit of all living beings. Every cell, from the simplest to the most complex, works as a miniature autonomous molecular factory. The cells are complex and highly organized. An organism is made up of a single cell or many cells. Cells possess the ability to replicate. Cells replicate by division. Cells also can obtain energy and interact with the environment. The cells are independent unit consisting of a membrane. The function of the plasma membrane is to surround the cell and acts as a border or boundary with the outside environment. There are two types of cells. First, we have the prokaryotic ones, are single-celled organisms belonging to the domains bacteria and archaea, are much smaller than eukaryotic cells. These have no nucleus and have lack or organelles. All prokaryotic cells are encased by a cell wall. Then we have the eukaryotic cells, are cells containing membrane-bound organelles and are the basis for both unicellular and multicellular organisms. In contrast, prokaryotic cells do not have any membrane-bound organelles and are always part.
Now in this section we're going to talk about the characteristics of living things. First of all, they are made of one or more cells depending on the living organism. For example, fungi it is a multicellular organism and a bacteria is a unicellular organism. They have a metabolism which helps them degrade substances and replace newly manufactured ones. They maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis, for example, us in humans is a way for us to maintain a certain temperature. For example, if the weather it is really cold, our bodies try to keep ourselves warm, and if the weather it is very hot, we try to keep ourselves really cold. They respond to stimuli. They can react in a way to different changing conditions outside themselves, and they possess DNA, which is the genetic material that each cell it has by law, and they grow in size. They reproduce in a asexual and in a sexual way. For example, in the sexual way we have two parents, one offspring, and the asexual way we have one parent and one offspring, and they evolve in the way that they try to adapt to the environment through different generations. The characteristics of a prokaryotic cell are mainly that they are unicellular and they lack a nucleus, which is a nucleus is a very important characteristic in a eukaryotic cell. There are two categories, bacteria and archaea, which the main difference between these two are that they have a different structure and the metabolic pathways are different. The internal structure of this type of cell it is between 1 and 2 micrometers in diameter, and they have a very rigid cell wall which is made of peptidoglycan, molecule made of short chains of amino acids or peptides linked to sugar molecules. Another very important thing is that some bacteria and archaea have one or more flagella. And just to review very quickly this type of cells, the main characteristics they have a flagella, a bacterial DNA, ribosomes, microsomes, capsule, a cell wall, and a plasma membrane.
Okay, in order to talk about the history of the microscope, I want to start with the fact that Al Haytham published the book of optics that says that the light was related with the vision Then Hans and Zacharias Jensen made the first compound microscope that has magnified the objects to 3 to 9, between 3 and 9 times the real size. Then Robert Hooke designed a microscope of 3 lenses with a light source of an oil lamp, and his magnification was from the 20 to the 50 times the real size. Now, Anton Leeuwenhoek made a microscope with a spherical lens and metal plates. Okay, finally, with the history of the microscope, Anton Leeuwenhoek made a new microscope with a spherical lens placed in a metal plate with a magnification of 200 times to the 300 times. Yeah. Now, the cell theory starts with some drawings of Robert Hooke that he published in his own work called Micrographia. And then Anton Leeuwenhoek describes it like animalculous, something like that. No? Then Theodor Schwann and Matthias Schilden proposed the first postulate of the cell theory, that is that the cells are the unit of that the cells is the elemental unit of plant and animals, of living things. That was the first postulate of cell. The second one is that the cell is a physiological unit of life, then that every cell comes from a pre-existing cell, then that the cell contains the hereditary information, the DNA, and that was the four, and that was from the history of microscope and the cell theory. Yeah.
I'm going to talk about the cell transport. Well, for the cell to stay alive, it must exchange material with its environment, and it does this through the membrane. The membrane allows the movement of substances by 2 types of transport. First, we have the passive transport, which does not require an input of energy, as compounds are able to move freely across the membrane based only on favorable certain ingredients. And then we have the energy required transform, which, just like the name says, requires the cell to expend energy for the movement of substances. Well, the passive transport occurs through diffusion, osmosis, and facilitated diffusion. The diffusion is a process by which the molecules move from a higher point of concentration to a lower one. During this process, the cell doesn't have a control of the direction or speed of the molecules. Then we have the osmosis, and there is a phenomenon of diffusion of water through a semi-permeable membrane that separates 2 solutions with different concentration of solute. A solute is a substance that can be dissolved. Next, we have the facilitated diffusion, that is when the substances that need to cross the membrane are ions or polar molecules, are of considerable size or low solubility. They must use a specific transport to proteins, and well, this is the facilitated dissemination. We have the facilitated dissemination or the facilitated diffusion, and is when the substance that needs to cross the membrane are ions or polar molecules from considerable size or low solubility, and they need a specific transport proteins, and this is what is called facilitated diffusion. Then we have the active transport and that consists in endocytosis and exocytosis. The endocytosis is when the cell needs to acquire extensive material from the extracellular environment. They are engulfed by the plasma membrane and transported through vesicles. And then we have the exocytosis, is when the cell needs to invest energy to release certain substances, which remain enclosed in vesicles that fuse with the plasma membrane to diffuse their contents out of the cytosol.
Levels of organization. As you know, life is a very wide topic, so it is divided into several levels that start from the smallest category up to the largest one. This organization starts with the smallest unit of matter, the atom. A group of atoms form a molecule, which combined with others form cells. One example is the human blood cell. Cells make up tissues, and tissues work together to form organs. A group of similar organs form an organ system, such as the circulatory, the muscular, etc., and all of them combine to form a complete organism. All the organisms of the same species that live in the same area are called populations, which in turn make up communities. Groups of communities form ecosystems, which integrated form a complete biosphere. To sum up, there are 11 levels that make up life. They are atoms, molecules, cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, organisms, populations, communities, ecosystem, and biosphere. Homeostasis. What is it? It is the ability of an organism to maintain an internal stability despite the changing external conditions. It is composed by 3 elements, which are the receptor. It is the structure that detects the change. The control center, which is the brain, and the effector, which is the organ or cells that respond to the change. One example of homeostasis is the body temperature regulation. It happens when our brain detects an increase in our body temperature, so it activates mechanisms like sweating to help cool the body. Finally, why is it important? Well, it is essential for survival, since a disruption in this process can cause damages in the organism.